My dreams have always been vivid and intense, for better or for worse. Some people have told me they never dream, or they have dreams, but never remember what they're about. Me? My dreams were like movies, complete with complex characters and dynamic plots. I created entire worlds with my dreams. I lived entire lives. Sometimes it's a lot of fun. On the other hand, there were times that I had such petrifying nightmares that I thought I would never feel safe in my own room again. I recall waking up to find that my mother's head had transformed into that of an alligator, and she chased me around the room until she cornered me, screaming that she wanted to eat my insides. It sounds strange now, but I remember waking up in a cold sweat, and it was a week before I would let my mother hug me again. Most of the time though, I loved dreaming. I'm a writer, so I love to draw upon my dreams as inspiration. I felt like my imagination was unleashed while I was asleep. My subconscious could take my imagination to destinations that were otherwise unreachable. My waking imagination was a horse-drawn carriage, and my dreaming imagination was a starship. I used to wish I could live my life in that half-awake state between consciousness and reality. That was before. When it all began, my father had died a year earlier in a car accident. I was there when it happened. I was riding in the passenger seat of a car with him, and we were talking and laughing like we did 1,000 times. There was the road ahead, and then there was a semi-truck, and then we were upside down. I spent one night in the hospital. So did my father. I woke up the next morning. My father didn't. Suffice to say, it was tough, but a year later, I felt more or less okay. There were good days and bad days, but I really surprised myself at how well I handled the loss. You see, I dreamt pretty frequently of my father. Probably that's normal. The loss was never far from my mind, and being the vivid dreamer that I am, it was only natural that he should make an appearance. I wish that these dreams were of happier times, but to be honest, the dreams were unsettling. The problem was, in my dreams, I knew my father was dead, and yet I saw him and spoke to him. It's not like I knew I was dreaming, and I don't remember thinking he was a ghost either. It's hard to explain. Every time, I knew my father was dead, and I also knew that he was right there. But in my dreamlike state, the logical part of my brain never penetrated the contradiction. He was both dead and alive, and it never occurred to me that this was impossible. Both were correct. This was profoundly frustrating. I can remember him driving a car, with me in the passenger seat. Ominous, I know, but I honestly wasn't thinking that at the time. My first thought, actually, was, "Dad, you're dead. I really don't know if you should be driving." I said this to him. He didn't seem to hear me, so I didn't say anything for a while, because I didn't want to offend him. Then, my father turned to me, looking at me with eyes that displayed no emotion or recognition. He looked at me, but didn't really see me. His face in that moment still haunts me, because when my father was alive, there was always some sort of emotion. Love, pride. Failing that, there was at least frustration, anger, sadness, or weariness. He showed none of that. He was utterly blank. His voice, too, sounded unlike him when he spoke. totally devoid of any emphasis or dynamism, he said, "You shouldn't be here." "What?" "You shouldn't be here." "I shouldn't, but Dad." I remember feeling my voice cracking with emotion, even in my dream state. "Dad, you're the one who shouldn't be here. You have to wake up now." "What?" Just like that, I was jolted awake by a harsh noise. In the movies, you always see people waking from a nightmare and sitting bolt upright in their beds with their eyes wide and their brows sweating. I'm sure I didn't do that exactly, but that's what I felt like as my bulging eyes frantically scanned my bedroom. Something had woken me up. Something or someone had made a noise and woken me. It sounded almost like a snipping sound. My eyes were adjusted to the dark, but I didn't see anyone else in my room. I live with cats, but I didn't see them even when I turned on the lights and searched the hallway. Nothing. I looked at my clock. Midnight. I always struggled to get back to sleep once I'd woken up. I tried to go back to sleep, but all I got was the aggravation of an insomniac desperate for rest that will not come. I couldn't drift off again, and my alarm screamed at me hours later. What kept me awake? It wasn't the dream of my father. It wasn't the pressure of getting needed rest before a busy day at the office. It was that sound. I distinctly heard it. It was the sound a pair of shears makes, but 20 times louder. I figured it must have been in my dream, but no. I was certain it had happened in my bedroom. The sound had been right next to my ear. The next day at work, I doubled my usual intake of coffee, and I still kept nodding off at my desk. My bloodshot eyes made me look like I was hungover, but my co-workers were kind enough not to say anything. Even a year after my father's passing, they still forgave me for being a little dishevelled from time to time. Even my boss said nothing when he stopped by my office, though he did give me a once-over that made me feel self-conscious. I hadn't bothered to shower or press my shirt as I usually did each morning. That evening, my roommate John and I were sitting around having a few beers and playing video games. His bedroom is right next to mine, so I asked if he'd seen anything peculiar the night before. He said, "I dunno, dude. Like, what do you think I might have heard?" "It was like a snip." "A snip?" "Yeah." I wanted him to tell me I was crazy, or that I must have been dreaming, but instead, he said the worst possible thing. "Yeah, I heard something that woke me up too." "What?" I paused the game. "Yeah. When do you think that would have happened?" "Around midnight." He nodded. Yeah, I definitely heard something around then. I couldn't quite place what it was. I figured it was a cat or one of you guys." "Did it sound like a snipping noise?" "I couldn't really tell," he replied, "but it sounded like it came from your room." I felt pins and needles begin in my chest and prick their way down my arms and legs. I swallowed hard, trying not to betray any sort of emotion in my face. Suddenly, John broke into a goofy grin, and relief washed over me. I punched him in the arm. "You idiot." "Ow, dude," he said, laughing. "Sorry, you just make it too easy." "Right. Bro, noises happen at night. It was probably the goddamn cats." That night, I dreamt again, but not of my father. God, I wish I'd dreamt of anything else. I recognised the setting. It was clearly my house at night. The strange thing was, I didn't have the sense that I was myself, but rather that I was observing from somewhere far away. Was I having an out-of-body experience? My view was from the middle of the living room, looking through the door into the kitchen. For several moments, there was no sound but the ticking of a clock. I tried to move, but couldn't so much as look around. I tried to speak, but couldn't even move my lips. Again, even though I could see clearly, I had the sense that I wasn't really myself, but a silent observer. This gave me a despairing sense of helplessness. My eyes were pried open to something I didn't want to see. Then, I heard a metallic jostling noise. Someone was jiggling the knob of our back door. They were trying to turn it, but they couldn't quite get the door to open. Was it locked? No. If that were the case, they wouldn't be able to turn the knob at all. So why the struggle? I was incapable of blinking, but even if I could, I'm sure my eyes would have been locked on the scene. The knob turned. The door opened, just a crack. Then, it swung open in full. What I saw is etched in my mind forever. To be honest, I'm struggling to tell you this, as I recall the numb sense of horror I felt as I beheld the thing for the first time. The creature was almost human. It had 2 legs, 2 arms, and it stood at about my height. But I can't conceive that any human could endure the anguish of this thing's existence. It was naked, and its skin was very pale and covered in cuts of varying length and depth. Some looked like years-old scars, and some of the wounds were one day fresh. The thing's age was impossible to know. It might have been 30 years old, or 90. Its physique made it seem male, but it had no genitals. It was also lacking nipples, a belly button, or any visible hair. Its feet, devoid of toes, looked like a pair of milky white potatoes, and the thing seemed to struggle to remain upright as it walked. 3 fingers had been removed from each of its hands, leaving only the index and the thumb of each. These held 2 pairs of shears, which were jagged, rusty, and nearly 2 feet long. Every so often, one of its hands would twitch, and it would snip the air with a sound that seemed to deafen me, even though it came from such a small thing. As terrifying as those weapons were to behold, it was nothing compared to the face. Its ears, nose, and eyelids had been cut off, leaving gaping holes in their stead. Its eyes were bloodshot and dry as a result. Worst of all, its mouth had been snipped at the corners, giving an unnatural, unending grin. The thing made no noise as it stalked through the kitchen, snipping the air and shuffling along on its mutilated feet. I could do nothing but stare, taking in every inch of the thing's lean, grotesque body. Suddenly, my perspective changed like the feed from a security camera system. I was following the creature as it stalked through my home. It walked uncertainly like a toddler or a drunk, and seemed to almost fall once or twice. But it never lost its footing as it manoeuvred around the living room furniture. At the bottom of the stairs, it seemed to linger for a fraction of a moment. But then it took its first step up, and then its next. I watched from just behind the thing as it ascended, and on each step, it would snip one of its 2 long shears. Oddly, the steps never creaked, even as it stopped and stumbled. The only sound was the irregular snipping noise. My next perspective was of the top floor of my house, but it seemed like the roof had been removed. I could see both the upstairs hallway and the inside of my bedroom. I even saw myself, sleeping soundly in my own bed. Slowly, the creature came into view as it reached the top of the steps. At this point, even in my disembodied state, panic set in, because I knew I was the creature's target. The shears hungered for blood, and I was to be their sustenance. I willed myself, pleaded with myself to wake up and see the danger, or for my silent spirit to repossess my body so I could flee. The thing stopped just outside my bedroom. I was screaming in my mind to wake up, to run away. Perhaps I heard my pleas, because my body grunted softly and rolled to the side. The thing was right by my door now. Slowly, its right arm came up, raising its shears to its face. An impossibly red tongue slithered out of its too wide mouth, licking the blade of the shears before taking them between its teeth. Its hand freed of this burden. It wrapped its thumb and forefinger around the knob of my door. It seemed to shudder with excitement, and its left hand twitched. Abruptly, I was in my bed again. I was drenched in sweat, yet I pulled the covers all the way up to my chin and slammed my back against the wall, cowering. My eyes were locked onto the doorknob. I couldn't be certain, but in the dark, I thought I could see it moving ever so slightly. I strained my ears for a sound that would confirm my fears, for the jostling of my doorknob, or worse, the thirsty sound of those ruthless shears. I stared at the door unblinkingly for an hour, and sleep was the farthest thing from my mind. After that, I chanced moving enough to turn on my bedside lamp. I finally thought to pick up my cell phone and call John, who was sleeping next door. He sounded annoyed until I told him there was someone in the house. Even though I protested, he got up out of bed and looked around for me. As you've probably guessed, there was no sign that anyone had been there. Just another one of my hauntingly vivid dreams, I thought. I was embarrassed that I'd dragged poor John out of bed over it. I felt stupid rather than scared, but I still didn't sleep. The next day, I was almost too tired to even go over to my girlfriend's house, but I dragged myself over. We relaxed on her couch watching a dumb movie. Brooke was always easy to talk to, so I described my dream to her. "Ew," she said when I'd finished, and that made me laugh. "Man, that was a bad one," I said. "I mean, nightmares always just sound dumb in the retelling, but this one really got to me." I called him the Midnight Man. "No, I believe you. That sounds awful." I shook my head. I thought I was done with all that. I haven't had a bad one like that since I was a kid. For a moment, she didn't say anything. I thought that meant the conversation was over. But then she asked, "Did I ever tell you I used to have night terrors?" I was surprised. "No." "It's a bit different from having a nightmare. I remember feeling, not that I'd imagined something awful, but that something was coming for me. I remember thinking that I was going to die, even if I couldn't point to how." She looked into my eyes. "Are you still dreaming about your dad?" I blinked twice and nodded. "Sometimes. We all have our demons. I think, in dreams, they show themselves in the worst ways." With a lump in my throat, all I could say was "yeah." Instead of saying anything more, I pulled her into my arms. We spent the evening in each other's embrace. But we both had an early morning at work, so I didn't spend the night. I went home. I went to sleep. Musk. That's what wakes me. My eyes are heavy from 2 sleep-deprived nights, and I almost drift off again. But I don't. Something is wrong. It's not a sound this time. No. It's musk. It's the smell of an unbathed dog, and it's filling the whole room. It's an itch in my nose that scratches at my consciousness until I open my eyes. And I scream. The monster is right there. It's standing over me, smiling its slit-mouth smile, its lidless, bloodshot eyes boring straight into mine. The thing is in my room, and it's here to kill me. It's right there. I scream and cry, louder than I ever have before, and I feel my throat going hoarse. I pray that someone will hear me and come to rescue me. Somehow, I know that I will not be heard. I start scrambling to get up, but when I try to move, a searing, stabbing pain spreads from my wrists to my brain. My eyes snap to my wrists, and the sight brings bile bubbling to the back of my throat. My arms are stretched out to my sides, and each of my wrists is pinned to the headboard with a pair of those long, rusty shears. My first instinct is to try and pull free, but even the slightest twitch of my arms causes a jolt of pain that attacks my entire nervous system. I was in agony. This has to be a dream, I tell myself. It must be, because this creature could not exist. It must not exist. If horror like this exists in the world, then I've been a fool for ever feeling happy and safe. If this is how I was always meant to die, then what was the point of living? Though the monster's shears have been employed to drain my lifeblood from my wrists, it somehow has materialized 2 more. And the monster eyes me up and down, twitching and snipping hungrily. Its eyes linger on my bloodied arms, and the sight of the carnage seems to excite it. Its lips peel back to reveal yellowed teeth and a blood-red tongue. It seems to be considering what to do with me next. I'm pleading unintelligibly, begging it to let me go or for this nightmare to end, but to no avail. The thing cannot, or more likely, will not hear me. If anything, my screams seem to entice it further, its lips pull back and its jaw hanging loose in a silent cackle. It leans in, as though to get a closer look at my tear-streaked face. The wet dog smell pervades my senses. I gag, and the thing leans in closer and closer. With both of its toeless feet still firmly planted on the ground. It seems impossible that the thing should be able to lean so far toward me without tumbling down on top of me. Still, it does, and it inhales my scent through the slits that used to be its nose. The thing reverts to its upright position. As the creature steps away from me, I dare to feel an iota of relief, but it flutters away as the creature slowly falls to its knees at the foot of my bed. The creature slowly raises the shears in its left hand up to its face. Its red tongue snakes out from between its lips and licks the blades tantalizingly. It then takes the shears between its teeth, and with its freed hand, it snatches my right ankle up with its thumb and forefinger. The icy cold grip of its spindly fingers is impossibly strong. I kick and kick, but the creature is utterly unfazed. I use my other foot to kick at the monster's forearm. This causes pain to shoot up from my wrists as my body gets jostled around. But the monster only grins wider. Its grip tightens, nearly crushing my ankle. I can only whimper pitifully. It takes about a dozen good cuts, and then my foot rips free. I scream and scream as I watch the thing raise my appendage into the air like a trophy. My stomach finally gives, and my vision clouds from the pain and blood loss. I can feel myself growing cold, but even now, the thought of death is secondary to the horror of this creature. The monster's jaw drops open, allowing its other pair of shears to clatter to the floor. It opens its cut mouth impossibly wide, revealing all of its teeth and that gory tongue. It manages to jam my entire foot into its mouth, and it begins to chew. Its yellowed teeth make quick work of it, bones and all. As unconsciousness takes me, all I can hear is a horrendous crunching as I fade to blackness. I woke up screaming and thrashing around, and 2 nurses had to come in and restrain me so I didn't tear out my IV. It took a good 5 minutes for me to understand that I was in hospital. It was another 10 before my breathing slowed. My heart was still palpitating when the doctor came in to see me. After a brief exchange of pleasantries, she asked me, "Do you remember what happened?" I told her, and she didn't seem to believe me. "How did I get here?" I demanded. Who found me? Is that thing still in the house?" The doctor grabbed my arm to check my IV and the bandages on my wrists. "I'm afraid you're a bit delusional. That's nothing to be alarmed about. You're probably dehydrated, and we have you on pain medication, so this is pretty normal. Are you sure you don't remember what happened?" "Yes," I exclaimed, though my exclamation was little more than a whisper. "I told you, a monster." "There was no monster. You don't remember the accident?" the doctor asked. "Accident?" She sighed. "You were in a collision with a truck. It knocked you off the road. Apparently the car rolled many times. You were lucky not to have been killed. You've been out for 3 days." I was shocked, but it made sense. Of course, an accident. I didn't remember driving, but I must have been. Of course it made more sense than a creature with scissors devouring my foot. The doctor continued. "We had to make a difficult decision to keep you alive." Her eyes trailed down to my feet. I pulled the sheet up slightly, and I felt the blood drain from my face. My bare left foot was exposed, and then I saw white bandages covering the stump end of my right leg. Before I could properly process this, my mother and sister came rushing in, and there were several minutes of tears, sobbing, and unending hugs. For minutes, we just sat there and embraced, as we had far too many times that year. "Thank God you're okay," my mum said between racking sobs. "I didn't think you were ever going to wake up. I didn't think—" "I'm okay," I assured her. Even then, I had to be the strong one. This sucks, but I'll get through this. We'll get through this." There was more crying and hugs. My sister was tearful, but otherwise strangely quiet. I understood. I could only imagine what she and my mother had been going through the past 3 days. We lost my father to a car accident just a year ago, and now they'd faced the very real possibility of losing me the same way. I was the one who broke the silence by saying, "The thing is, I don't even remember driving." My mum started wailing, suddenly inconsolable. Strange, I thought. Why did that of all things set her off? She collapsed into my sister's chest. My sister, eyes red and wet, took her hand in mine. "You weren't driving," she said. I blinked a few times. "Then who was?" My sister couldn't bear to look at me. In a choked voice, she said, "Daddy's dead." I know," I replied. This set my mother going even worse. She was shaking, and so was my sister. She said, "What do you mean, you know?" "I know. I'm not delirious, whatever these doctors say. I know Dad died last year." My sister shook her head. "No. God, no. No, you couldn't know. Dad didn't die last year. He died while you were still sleeping. He died last night." I couldn't believe it. Had I imagined or dreamt all of it? A year of my life was gone. I've had to go through the entire grieving process anew, and had to relive all of the tears and all the well-wishes. This time it's been worse though, because I'm different than I was, and no one can understand why. Regardless of what people told me, I felt that he'd been gone a year. I tried to explain this to my sister, and she accused me of being callous. I'm sure my mother felt that way too, though she'd never say it. Since the accident, I've drifted through a perpetual fog of confusion. It seems like every other day or so, I learned that something I took for granted was a lie. And each time, it's like waking up from another dream. I never got that promotion. I never published that story. Worse, my girlfriend never even existed. That was really the worst thing, even worse than losing my foot. I actually still miss her. My memories of her are still so clear and exquisite, though just like all dreams, they're fading with each passing day. Those memories are fading. What doesn't fade, what never fades, is the too wide smile of the Midnight Man as my foot disappeared down its bloody throat. I don't think I'll ever understand exactly what happened to me, though I think about it every day. The way I see it, there are three possibilities. One, it really was all a dream, and predicting my father's death was just some tragic coincidence. Personally, I have trouble accepting that. Two, I had some sort of dreaming premonition. Maybe I have the gift of foresight, although if that's the case, I've never experienced it before or since. I have trouble accepting that too. Three, the creature really did this to me. All of it. It manufactured that year of my life, prolonging my grief and my pain, and in the end, devouring a part of me. Maybe each scar that it carried on its marred body had a story. I've often wondered, did it mark itself this way to remember its victims? Maybe it's been doing this to people forever. In a way, it's never truly gone, especially when I lay down to sleep at night. I've never exactly dreamt of the creature again, but the image of it is burned into my mind's eye and becomes visible whenever night falls. I can't bring myself to fall asleep before midnight now. I get much less sleep, but anything is preferable to the alternative. And the worst part is, I can't tell anyone. Nightmares always seem so silly in the retelling. No one takes them seriously. But last night, I dreamt of my father. It was he and I, driving in the car on a sunny country road, and he looked at me with the eyes and soul of the dead. He told me that I have to wake up.